Hi, welcome to another Luminar AI tutorial. I'm Darlene with Digital Photo Mentor. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to do quick edits with Luminar AI and some of the AI technology and tools available inside the photo editing software. This is actually day one of a 5-day photo editing challenge that I'm running over on my website. If you'd like to participate and download the raw files so that you can follow along, just sign up using the link provided. So without further ado, let's get started with today's video, Quick Edits in Luminar AI. To get started with Luminar AI, the first thing you're going to need to do is to add or import some images. I'm using the software as a standalone product, but you can also use it as a plugin for Lightroom and Photoshop. If you're a Lightroom user, check out my video on how to open and use Luminar as a plugin for Lightroom here. If you're using it as a standalone, just follow along with these next steps. The first thing you need to do is to click this little plus icon in the top bar. You'll notice that as I hover over it, there's a little tooltip that pops up saying add photos. Luminar has added those in many places so that if you aren't sure what a tool does, you can just hover over it and you'll often get these little tips. When I click on it, now you'll see that there's a choice between adding a folder of images, so if you have multiple images to add, or just one. If you've registered for the 5-day challenge and are following along, and you've downloaded the images for today, you'll notice that there's 3. So in this case, we're going to want to add a folder. Then you just have to navigate to the folder where the images are. I've already done that. And click Add Folder. Now you see the 3 images that we're going to be working on today. We're going to start with this one in the middle, the sunset. So make sure that that one is selected. Just click on the thumbnail. If your thumbnails are too small, there's a little pull-down menu over here on the right that you can make them bigger, or if they're too big, you can make them smaller. The next thing we're going to do is move into the template workflow. You'll notice that at the top here, there's some buttons. So it goes from catalog to templates to edit, and then finally export. This is a suggested workflow. The folks at Skylum have built in a lot of little tips and tools to help you know where to go next. This is one of them. So the next thing, you can even see that catalog is pointing to templates, so let's go there. So we're going to go ahead and click templates. If you prefer using keyboard shortcuts instead of clicking with a mouse, you can find the keyboard shortcuts to get from the different modules from one to another here. Now that we're in the template panel, you can see over on the right hand side, it says for this photo, and then there's a couple of template collections here. These are suggestions. Luminar AI analyzes your image and comes up with some suggestions based on what it thinks is the content or subject of your image. In this case, landscape or sky or sunset. So you notice that the suggestions are artistic, bird's eye view. Well, there's definitely a lot of sky here, so that seems accurate. Natural skies, definitely a good choice. And sunsets. So it's done a pretty good job of making some suggestions here. From there, you can choose one of the suggested collections and see what the templates look like inside. To apply them, you just click on them one by one and see how they look with your image until you find one that's close to what you're looking for. If you're not sure what you want to do with your image, this is a great way to just experiment and see what some ideas are on where you can take the image. Earlier, I played around with this image and I found one in the artistic collection that I liked, and that was the Supreme. I like the orange that it gives to the sky without overdoing the contrast and the saturation too much. One thing you want to be careful of when you're doing your editing is that you don't go over the top, meaning over saturation, over sharpening, or too much contrast. So I'll talk about that a little bit more later in terms of how do you know when you've gone too far. Once you've chosen a template that you want to start with, you can either just say, great, I'm already done because I'm happy with this image. Let's look at the before and after. And I'm just holding down the / key on my keyboard to see the before. So it's already given it a lot of punch and color. And if we're happy with that, we can just call it a day and move on to the next one. If you like a particular template and think that it's going to work well with a lot of your other images, make sure to save it to your favorites. And you do that just by clicking this little heart over here next to the template name. You can also dial the template back. So if it goes too far, like I mentioned with over editing, you can just pull this little slider at the bottom more to the left, and it sort of softens the entire effect. So any of the tools that have been applied to create this template, it's scaling them all back equally. Another option you have is to continue the editing yourself. One of the early criticisms of Luminar AI was that some people were worried that they weren't going to have full control of their editing and that the software is going to do it all for them. That is not the case at all. I think it's really the best of both worlds. So let's move into the next panel. That is Edit. So you can click it, or you can use the keyboard shortcut, which is the D in this case. And it takes you to where you'll find all the editing tools. If you've used Luminar 4, you'll notice that this panel looks a little bit different. They just changed it to combine all of the tools into a tools panel, and they're color coded by category now. So where we had Essentials, Creative, Portrait, and Professional all on the side before, now it's all in one panel, so you can easily find the tool that you're looking for, and they're color coded to separate them by category. You can also see which ones have been applied with this template. Anything with this little dot next to the name of the tool means that it's had some adjustments done to this particular tool. You'll notice that the Enhance AI is the very first tool at the top under the Essentials panel. This is the one that Skylum recommends you start with, and I would have to agree. To open this tool, just click the little down arrow or just click here on the header bar. Once you've opened the tool, you'll see two simple sliders here. Accent AI and Sky Enhancer. So Accent AI, again, does more analyzing of your image, the artificial intelligence, and it tries to add things like contrast, sharpness, boost, clarity, and so on. So as I drag this up higher to 100 to the right, so anything that's going to the right means that you're increasing it. Going to the left, you're decreasing that effect, or it's off. You can see what this slider is doing is it's punching up the color and doing a really nice job. If we want to see what the Sky Enhancer is doing, let's drag that one up. Now you can see the color is only affecting the sky. It's getting more intense and more contrasty and saturated. This is where you want to be careful of going too far. When we look at this image now, the sky colors here look a little bit oversaturated and a little bit unrealistic to me. So I'm going to scale these back just a little bit on each of them to give me something a bit more real looking. I just want to bring attention to a couple of things here. If you don't see the panels like this, the tools in the color coding in categories, it's possible that you haven't updated your version of Luminar AI yet. This is the version of 1.0.1. It was the first update that came out January 21st. If you're not familiar with the changes, just click the link in the upper corner to see the video I did on the updates and what is new. Moving on with this image, I'm going to apply two more things. Moving down to another, a little bit further down in the Essentials panel is the Structure AI. Structure is kind of like clarity if you're used to using Lightroom or Photoshop. Let's take a look what it does when you pull it to the right. And this is something I recommend doing with any of the sliders. Go to extremes on both sides. So go to the right, go to the left, and then decide where you want to settle, somewhere in the middle. So you'll notice that as we go to the left here, it actually gets sort of blurry and the image starts to fuzz out. And as we go to the far extreme on the right, it starts to have sort of a grunge or really heavily textured look. So I wanted to go somewhere in the middle. The default that came with this template was 20, but let's give it a little bit more. I'm going to settle somewhere around 35. You can also mask any of the tools, meaning having them apply to only parts of the image. But I'll cover that in another video because today we want to focus on quick edits and getting your photo processed in under 3 minutes. The last thing I want to do with this one is the Composition AI. This is a new tool to Luminar AI. Once you open it, there's a purple button here that says Composition AI, and if you click it, it will give you a suggested composition. So it's going to possibly crop the image based on what it thinks is going to be a stronger version of this image. So one thing I find is that it works pretty well and it does a really nice job of the actual cropping and what should be taken out of the image, but it doesn't always do the placement exactly right. So in this case, I'm just going to move it over a little bit. The only other thing I'm going to do is if you hover your mouse on the corner, if I put the mouse right there, that's the sizing tool. So if I slide it in and out now, it will size the crop. But if I move it out a little bit more, you get this little arched arrow, right? That allows you to rotate the image. So click and hold. And when I start to move it, the grid will show up. And what I'm looking to do is sort of correct this horizon. And I'm looking at the land where the land meets the water to kind of correct on one of the axes there. Make sure that that little leaf at the top is still cropped out. And if I'm happy with the crop, all I have to do is hit enter. One thing to note about the Composition AI tool is that if you're using Luminar AI as a plugin for Photoshop, this tool will actually be not available. You won't even see it show up. That is because Photoshop requires the same number of pixels to come back from the plugin as what it started with. So you need to do any of your final cropping inside of Photoshop if you're using it as a plugin. I'm just going to hit enter to accept the crop. And there we go. Once again, let's look at the original before image and after. There's a couple more ways that you can do a preview. Up at the top here, there's looks like two squares and a line. If you click that, you'll get the split screen panel. So that allows you to drag this little slider back and forth to see before and after if you prefer using that method of previewing. Or you can click and hold on this little eyeball at the top right corner, and that does the same thing as I was doing earlier with the backslash. So then we can see the original and the finished image, and you can judge whether or not you've gone far enough or too far. In this case, I think it's just right, so let's move on to the next image. If you're following along, grab this forest image, and let's head to the templates module again. Once again, it has suggested some templates for us. I've already pre-chosen one in the scenery collection called More Volume. From here, I'm going to move into the Edit panel. And the first thing I'm going to do here is go to the Light panel because it's a little bit too bright. Something else I want you to be aware of is that if you want to see a histogram, if you're used to seeing histograms in Lightroom and Photoshop or another editing software, they've moved it up here to the View panel and Show Histogram. It's a little small, but you can still get the idea, and you can also get an idea of what's clipping in your image by pressing J on the keyboard. So now I can see in areas that are red, these are the highlights that are clipped or no detail, and anything that is blue, like very small over here, is shadows with no detail. So I want to be really conscious of keeping my highlights intact, so I'm going to lower the overall exposure or darken the whole image a little bit. Because it's a jungle-y forest picture, it should be sort of dark and moody. And then I'm going to lower the highlights a bit more. I'm not so concerned about these highlights on this leaf and up in the background here, because I'll put a vignette on and take care of those later. So J to turn off the highlights. We can just leave the histogram there. You can also use another smart slider in here in the light panel called Smart Contrast. It does a really great job of boosting contrast in an effective and pleasing way. So often I will use this slider before I touch any of the others. I'm going to take this one even a little bit higher than what the template started with. I mentioned adding a vignette, but before I do that, we're going to do Composition AI. So once again, I'm going to click the button, and it's provided a crop. Though the one thing that I wanted to get rid of is this brown area over on the left here. So it's definitely done that. But I want to make sure that I keep that leaf, this leaf at the top, and let's say about like that. So once again, it's provided a pretty good crop. I might just widen it a little bit and hit enter, and we're good to go. Now to add that vignette that I mentioned, close composition. Down at the bottom of the Essentials panel, so the last blue one, is the Vignette tool. So left is dark and right is white, so you can actually add a white vignette. But in this case, we're going to darken it. So a couple things about vignettes, if you're new to this type of tool, is you want to avoid doing this type of vignette where it's really obvious and you can see the gradation from dark to light. So you want to make it more gradual, and that has to do with the feather slider. But I'll show you a little trick. if you drag the feather slider all the way to 0, now you can actually see the shape of the vignette. You can change the roundness, so you can have it sort of be more square to the left or more circular to the right, and the size. And you can also, in Luminar, place it. If you've used the radial filter in Lightroom or Photoshop, Adobe Raw, you'll know that it only applies from the edges in, so it's always centered. But with the vignette inside of Luminar, you can actually off-center it, so I really love that ability. Just click this Choose Subject button, and then you get this little crosshairs for your mouse, and wherever you place it, I'm just going to move it around so you can see that it's changing the positioning, so I can go off-center and focus on this area here of the stream. Then when I change my feather back to default, to reset any of the sliders to default, just double click on the actual slider and it will go back to its default setting. And I'm going to feather it even a little bit more and then take the amount back up a little bit. Okay, so that is my process for adding a vignette. Just to recap, feather to 0, set the size and the shape and the position using a really dark vignette, and then turn the feather back up to soft and the amount to something that's a little more subtle. Next up, you'll notice right above the vignette tool is a landscape set of tools. Now, seeing that this is a landscape image, this is probably going to be an appropriate place to look. The template has applied dehaze and golden hour. And if you want to see what any of the filters are doing by themselves, just use this little toggle switch on the right of any of the filters. It's like a light switch. So click to disable it and then click to turn it back on. This one is fairly subtle, so let's take it up a little higher. I'm going to increase the golden hour so you can see what golden hour does is it gives it like a ray of sunshine coming into the scene. Very nice. And foliage enhancer, as you would imagine, is picking up on the greens. Okay, so here's another little tip for this one. If you don't see the advanced settings here, just open that box at the bottom. Tip for using the foliage enhancer is to change the hue. I find that it comes out as a default really sort of neon green, almost towards the blue end of the spectrum, and I like to have my greens a bit more yellow. So I'm going to drag it over to this direction to the left, and then I'm going to bring the slider for foliage enhancer down. This one is one that I generally keep fairly low and subtle because it's really easy to overdo this one. Okay, in case you're not sure what overdone or oversaturated looks like, this is it. So back to something a bit softer. There we go. Close the landscape tool, and now we're going to get into a couple in the creative panel. So scrolling down, you'll see the ones in the pink section now. Sky AI. Now you'll notice that it has a dot next to it, meaning the template has applied Sky AI. So Sky AI is a sky replacement, but you'll also notice that there's no sky in this image. And you see here that it's all grayed out. So even though the template comes with a sky replacement, it's not being applied here because the software did not find a sky. So I'm just going to use this reset button here. That's the first one. It looks like a back arrow to turn this one completely off because it doesn't really apply here. Next, you'll notice that the Atmosphere AI has also been applied. Atmosphere AI will allow you to do things like add fog or mist or a haze into an image. If you have something like this that was shot in early morning and you want that fog sort of over the lake or over the river, this might be really applicable. To see what it does, again, drag the sliders up to extremes and you can see how it's changing the depth perception in the image. Haze is a little bit different. It's more in the valley. So something like this could work for this image or one similar. I might want to mask it off so it's not on the bamboo or on the trees. But for this one, I don't think it really is necessary. So I could either reset it or just toggle it off and close it. So even though it's still got a dot next to it, it's turned off and it's not currently applying to the image. The last one I'm going to apply here, and this is just one of my favorite tools of all in Luminar. I use this one a lot and probably on about half of my images, and that is mystical. If you used older versions of Luminar, it used to be called image radiance. So if you're looking for that one, it's now called mystical. To apply it, just drag the amount up, and again, I'm going to take it to extreme so I can see what it does. And I have the choice of colorizing. I can increase the saturation. Again, be very careful. This is definitely overdone. I can warm it up a little bit so it's more of a golden glow, and then scale it back. Let's do a before and after. So very quickly, using a template to start with and a few adjustments, this is the finished image. Remember the template that I applied was called More Volume. Now let's take a look at the slider at the bottom. It says More Volume, Edited Now. So the program knows that I've started with that template and I've done some of my own edits. So it allows me to actually save that. So click on these little 3 dots over here to open up this menu and click Save. Now that template will be saved into your favorites. If you're not sure where to find those, let's head back to the templates module. I'm going to hit T on my keyboard, and here on the right hand side, so there's templates and then there's my collection. As expected, anything you've saved into favorites, like earlier we had Supreme saved as favorites, are saved there. And anything that you've saved as your own edits, such as this one I just created, More Volume Edit, is there. Now the More Volume Edit doesn't really tell me anything in terms of the name, so I could rename this Bright Green Forest. So then I might know for next time, if I'm editing something that is similar or has lots of greenery, to try this template. Moving on to our last image, I'll show you how quickly again you can use templates and your own version of the edited templates to quickly and easily edit your images. In my favorites, I've saved one called Toscana. You'll find those in the regular template collections. Just click to apply it, and you can see immediately it's doing a lot. It's applied a sky replacement, it's done some color enhancements, and so on. Now notice in my collections, I've actually used this one in the past, and I've edited it, and I've done one with a sky flip. So let's take a look at what my edit looks like. You can see that it's basically the same look with the same sky replacement, but I've toned down that pink color a little bit. Just for fun, let's see what the Bright Green Forest template that I just saved does on this image. Very different than the other one, but not bad. I can work with this. I would dial back the mystical tool a little bit and maybe some of the contrast, but not a bad starting point. The Supreme template that I used earlier, let's see that one. Also not bad. So as you can see, you can get to a really good starting place very quickly using some of these templates and AI tools and come up with an image in under 3 minutes that looks really good. As you can see, using the templates that come with Luminar AI allow you to quickly get to a pretty decent result, and a little bit of tweaking using the AI tools allows you to finish the image quickly and easily, sometimes with just a few clicks. To continue learning about photo editing, watch my next Luminar AI tutorial, where I'm going to talk about contrast, tone control, and sharpness. Click here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Your goal for today, if you're following along, is to try and edit these images in under 3 minutes. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.